There we can do something similar. We can create separate functions for connecting and inserting, and since we would be reusing the same logic, we might want to go for some helper functions instead. We got that helpers folder anyways with some API utilities, and there we can add a dbutil.js file to set up our database utility functions. And I'll then go to the newsletter.js file and grab the connect database and insert document functions, cut them from newsletter.js, and instead add them in dbutil, and just change the insert document function such that it also takes the collection as a parameter, so that we don't always talk to the newsletter collection here, but to any collection we get as a parameter. Now we want to export both functions so that we can import them into our files. And then we can use them here in newsletter.js. There we can now import from our dbutil file by going up to the helpers, dbutil, and here I'll import connect database and insert document. And for insert document, we now just also need to pass in that collection name as a second argument so that the email is inserted into the correct collection. And with that, we can go to the event ID file here and also import these two functions here. So from the helpers folder, we want to import from the dbutil file. And here we also want to import connect database and insert document and then use that. Here, for example, we connect to the database. So here we want to await connect database like this to get access to the client. Now this could be failing, so just as before, I will wrap it in a try catch block, catch any error we might be getting, like that, and create client as a variable, which we then set in here. And then in here, we want to send back a response with a status code of 500 and some message in the JSON body that could be connecting to the database failed, like this, and then still return to avoid that the rest of this function executes. If we do connect successfully down here for inserting the comment, we don't want to run this code here. Instead, we want to execute insert document, pass the client to insert document, use the comments collection, and pass the new comment as a document that should be inserted, and await to get access to the result. For that, we want to make sure that in dbutil, we actually do return that result, so that here we also grab that result and return it, like that. With that, we can insert the document and still use the result to then update the ID. Here we, by the way, also might want to use _ID to be in line with the automatically generated field, because there the field name is also _ID, as you saw in the last lectures. Now the main goal was to add error handling though, and hence I'll wrap this into a try catch block as well, catch any potential errors, return to not execute any other code if that did fail, and then send back a status code of 500 and some response data where we again could add a message of inserting comment failed. And now I just want to create result as a variable, which I actually set here to get scoping right. Now the only remaining part is where we get our data. We can also create a helper function for that, even though we only use it here, but still to have a uniform approach when it comes to working with the database. I will go to the dbutil file and export another async function, get all documents, sounds like a fitting name. And here I also need the client and the collection from which I want to get all documents. And then we can take this code where we get access to the database and then fetch all entries in comments and paste that into get all documents. Now actually we might want to accept sort, this sort object, as an argument as well to make this function more flexible and let the caller of the function specify how documents should be sorted. Then we want to use collection here and use the sort parameter here and ultimately, of course, return our documents like this. Now in the event ID file, we can import this newly added getAllDocuments function from the dbutil file and use it down there. Here in the get case, I want to call getAllDocuments, pass in my client, pass in my collection name, which is comments, and pass in my sort object, which defines that I want to sort by ID in descending order. Then we can remove this and await getAllDocuments to get all our documents here like this and return our response. But again, we want to add error handling so we can try this and catch any errors if something goes wrong here, in which case we stop function execution with return and then return a different response where the status code is set to 500 and we pass on some message. For example, here we could say getting comments failed. Now you will be able to refactor more. For example, sending back that error response is always pretty much the same. You could also create a separate function for that, just as a side note. Now with that, we get our documents here, and I want to send back a response here if that all works. Otherwise, we send back that error response. And we then close the client. And actually, now that I moved this success response into the try block, we can remove this return statement to make sure that we do close the client if we make it past try catch here. So to make sure that we do always get rid of that connection once we're done with our operations. And actually, I want to do something similar here for inserting a comment. Move this success code into the try block and then don't return here, so that we still do reach this part at the bottom eventually where we do close the connection. That's why I like this way of handling it better. I also want to close the connection here if we have invalid input, so I'll copy client close and add it in there. Because here I then want to return, I don't want to continue with code execution, hence here I want to close the client, so close the connection. And here we don't want to close the connection because here establishing the connection failed already. So here we definitely want to return. And with all of that, we can again test this again by breaking our credentials. Then go to a single event and show the comments. And fetching them fails now. And this breaks the front-end application actually, because now we're trying to map through all comments, even though we got no comments. So we might want to add better error handling on the front end as well. For the moment, I'll just fix it by bringing back my credentials and reloading. Now this still fails. So it seems like something is wrong. Now let's see what's wrong by reloading with the network tab open. And then if I click on show comments, this request still fails. Connecting to the database failed here. Even though I fixed my credentials again. Even though I did that, it looks like calling connect database failed in my handler function here. And actually I know what went wrong. I moved my function here, my helper functions here into the dbutil file, but there I'm referring to Mongo client. We need to add that import. So we should grab that Mongo client import and remove it from the newsletter file. We don't need it there anymore. Same is true for the event ID file in the comments folder. We can get rid of it there, but we should add this import in the dbutil.js file because we are using Mongo client there. That's why connecting failed. I was referring to Mongo client without having it available. So now with that, if we now reload, loading the comments works. And if I now break my credentials here and save this, if I now try to submit a new comment, this should fail, and it does. So that works. Again, no feedback on the front end. We could add it, we don't have it here. If I bring back my correct credentials and I try the same data again, this now worked. And if I now hide the comments and show them again, we see that both comments are loaded as well. So that is all working here, and we now did also add error handling therefore.